All right, so we got to have a conversation about Pat Robertson. I'm doing a little bit of a video reaction to him. Someone sent me this video clip, and they told me that I was going to be surprised by what Pat Robertson had to say. Now, first of all, Pat Robertson is a super evangelical. I mean, hardcore Christian. I grew up watching him when I was a kid, 700 Club. And for a lot of the younger members of my audience, if you don't know what the 700 Club is, it was this program that was shown on various networks, but usually it was on ABC when I was a kid. Basically, what you saw on that channel was the most hardcore Christian propaganda that you can possibly name. Like, for example, if you remember the hatred that some Christians had towards Harry Potter, it actually came from members of the 700 Club and people like Pat Robertson. So with that being said, you have to understand they are hardcore Christians, and they have a certain type of audience, a more older Christian right-leaning audience. When Pat Robertson, when I'm hearing that he's criticizing police, that's a shocker. And mind you, I am not a Christian. This shirt says this is Witches Against White Supremacy, pinned it from an ancient demon, and I have a book of shadows in the background here. So a book of Aphrodisian magic from Aphrodite, and also a witch's calendar. So I'm not exactly what you would call a Christian. So I'm very interested in what Pat Robertson has to say. Let's hear him out.
I am pro-police, folks. I think we need the police. We need their servants, and they do a good job. But if they don't stop this onslaught, they cannot do this.
Now, I want you to notice how Pat Robertson is phrasing this. Now, he first said, hey, folks, I'm pro-police, and he has to say it like that. And I get why he has to say it like that, because I used to be on the further right. I'm more of a centrist now, more of a centrist, probably more left-leaning than anything. I will definitely say that whenever you criticize the police, you criticize anybody in the military, you criticize anything that's like a sacred cow, you pretty much have to start off with pleasantries first. It's very, very similar to if you've ever watched ESPN. There's a guy on ESPN named Stephen A. Smith. And Stephen A. Smith, he's known to give harsh criticism, right? But the reason why it goes over so well with some people is because before he criticizes you, right, he will give you all the biggest accolades in the world. Like, for example, if he were to criticize LeBron James, he'd be like, well, LeBron James is a multiple-time MVP, multiple-time champion, greatest, one of the top 2 players of all time, in my opinion. He's on my Mount Rushmore basketball. He will give you all those accolades, but then he'd be like, right after, he'd be like, LeBron James ain't nothing. He's crap. He's like, oh my, he will build you up and then tear you down, right? So that's how you pretty much have to approach criticizing the freaking police if you're on the right. If you were to look at, certain channels that do lean more to the right, more so to the left, like the Amazing Lucas or High Impact Flicks, or even Mr. Dapperton when he was around. The channels that are more libertarian than anything else, but also lean a little bit to the right, what you'll notice is that whenever, they either can't criticize the cops, or before they do, they have to be very, very, very gentle with it. I actually even recall a scenario in which there was a Colin Noir. He was the guy, he's the black gun advocate, and he used to represent the NRA. And with him being more pro-gun, he's not exactly super duper left-leaning. So I remember that he was commenting on the Ahmaud Arbery case, because he's actually a lawyer, an actual lawyer. He actually passed the bar. So he was just commenting on it, on the legality of what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. And he was siding with Ahmaud Arbery, the victim of that shooting, of that horrible shooting in Georgia. And people started calling him a race baiter. They started calling him all kinds of names and everything. Colin Noir is a gun advocate who was simply commenting on a gun situation that could affect the whole country. And people jump down his throat. So with certain scenarios that are sacred cows to the right, or whatever the political right has made, has collectively made up its mind, you have to kind of start things off like that. And that's so sad that even someone like Pat Robertson, who has given so much money to freaking Republicans, so much money to people out there who lean right, who has helped the right for so many years, he has to walk on eggshells. That should tell you a lot about the state of where the political right is right now.
The police in Virginia picked up a lieutenant in the Army and began to give him trouble. And our state police are highly trained. But why they don't stop this?
If you're unaware of what he's talking about, it's that one situation where you had the Army lieutenant who was accosted by the police officers in Virginia, and the guy got pepper sprayed, and the officer was fired, and it's the guy suing in federal court. You know, Pat Robertson, you know, if you can see the frustration in his face, the one thing that I do understand about Pat Robertson is that he's a great political strategist. You know, he has gotten a lot of people elected. I mean, he understands politics. He's been around for a long time. You know, he's seen a lot of presidents come and go. So I think he understands political and social climate. You know, he's a very old man. He's been around during certain eras. He understands what things can look like. And I think what Pat Robertson is trying to do is he's trying to save the Republican Party. He's trying to save them right now. And that theme will become more and more apparent the more this video goes on, I think, because I haven't even seen this video yet, and yet I understand that I tried to do the exact same thing, and I suspect that despite the fact that I'm a pagan, you know, a witch, and Pat Robertson is a Christian, that we will be, you know, natural enemies in terms of theology, but I think in terms of politics, we are forward thinkers, and I think that's what Pat Robertson is sensing, because I think that he saw the numbers in Georgia where you had a bunch of black people voting against the Republican Party, essentially, you know, calling all Republicans racist. And you had the same exact thing happen across the country with Latinos, with many in the Latino community. Now, granted, the Latino community is more likely than the black community to be more conservative. However, they are still voting for Democrats here. So I think what's happening is Pat Robertson is seeing the writing on the wall, you know, and it's kind of, you know, if you could just pardon the pun there, because again, he's a Christian right on the wall. But again, I think he can kind of see what's actually coming. He's seeing the changing demographics, and he doesn't want Republicans to just lose every time. And I don't think that the Republican Party can quite see that, but I think that Pat Robertson can. I think that he can. The fact that so many other people can't seem to see that is not only worrying to me. I mean, it's not really my problem anymore because I'm no longer a Republican, but it is worrying to me that you have so many millions of people out there in this country who are voting, who are American citizens, who can't see that this is a new civil rights era, that the people who are jumping on Judge Floyd, people who are jumping on Daunte Wright, the people who criticized Philando Castile when he was shot, when he had a legal gun. The people who were jumping on Tamir Rice, 12-year-old boy, Breonna Taylor. You don't realize that you look just like the white people from the 60s and freaking 70s. And people like Pat Robertson would know about that. That's what I think he's trying to warn you. If you listen to what he sounds like, I think he's trying to warn the Republican Party. But they're not listening. They're just not listening.
And this thing is going on in Minnesota, but the Derek Chauvin, I mean, they ought to put him under the jail. He has caused so much trouble by kneeling on the death of George Floyd. It's just, I mean, on his neck.
What Pat Robertson just said there, I mean, you can't really go beyond that. The man's completely right. And I think that what Pat Robertson is realizing is that if Derek Chauvin is not convicted, it's going to create all-out chaos, for one. Number two, Pat Robertson, being a Christian, I mean, he's a pretty hardcore Christian. I don't think that he liked what he saw in that video. I think that for many Americans, when they saw what they saw in that video, it changed them. It gave them a visceral reaction. It gave them several reactions. But you do have some people out there who seem to think that George Floyd deserved what he got, or that Derek Chauvin didn't contribute to George Floyd's death, which is clearly not the case. I mean, if you've been watching the trial, it couldn't be any more clear, you know, but be that as it may, I think that what's happening is in something that's just beyond crazy to me, is that the boomer in the room is making the most sense. And that's just so sad that the boomer in the room is making the most sense. You know, I mean, you look at someone like Pat Robertson. He has a lot of experience with politics, a lot of experience with social climates, a lot of experience with social unrest. And I think what he's trying to do right now, and I'm going to say this repeatedly, is that he's trying to save the Republican Party. I think that he realizes that this is actually a big turning point. this is a turning point. This is going to make or break the Republican Party. He doesn't want Democrats to just win carte blanche forever. And I think that he's seeing that on the horizon. You know, a lot of pastors, they have that kind of foresight. Now, I'm not saying that Pat Robertson is right about everything. Of course, I disagree with most things that he has to say. But when it comes to seeing the writing on the wall in terms of, man, these donations are going to dry up if my audience is getting older and older and older, just like I am. If I don't start getting some younger people in here, then my audience is gonna start drying up, and also my donations are gonna start drying up, and that's gonna hurt my future and also the future of my offspring and anyone who's laid to me, who's gonna be relying off of my estate to survive. So again, he's thinking about not only his future, but the future of his church and his freaking family and everybody else, and even 700 Club. So again, you got to understand that he's telling you this for a reason. If you are on the right, if you're a part of the Republican Party, listen to this man. He's saying this for a reason.
It's just terrible what's happening. And the police, why don't they open their eyes to what the public relations are? They've got to stop this stuff.
Maybe they need more training. Consistent training. I don't mean
think
training.
The problem is
things, but
you've got to pay them more. We don't have the finest in the police department.
Now, there are several things that he said there, and also the co-host there that said there that I don't agree with. But man, Pat, tell us how you really feel, bro. I mean, he said they are not bringing in their finest. Pat Robertson. I mean, listen, those old people, man, they'll just tell it how it is. Whoo, Pat didn't hold back on that one. You know, I feel that he's saying what a lot of people in the black community feel. It's just that he has to be the one to say it to kind of convey it to the white community and to the more right-leaning, older, conservative audience. That it has to be somebody like Pat Robertson, and Pat's just telling it like it is right now. I mean, he's pointing towards more training and maybe paying them more, which I don't know if that's the answer at all, but when it comes to him saying that they are not hiring their brightest, I mean, you can't really argue that one, man. When you got people tossing flashbangs into freaking cribs and they can't tell the difference between a freaking taser and a firearm, I mean, you got to be honest with it. You got to be honest. I mean, Pat Robertson is not lying here. He's not giving you cap. He's telling you the honest truth right now. You know, you can't fault him for that. And I think that people on the right and people who are more of the Blue Lives Matter crowd, the people who are more the I would have other names for them, but I'm going to be nicer in this particular video. I think that they would do well to listen to Pat Robertson right now, because there's a reason why he's saying this. I think that if you look at his face, he's worried. And I don't think he's worried so much about like riots and the aftermath of what may happen in the Derek Chauvin trial. I think what he's worried about is the future of the political right and the conservative right, because the more left leaning the country becomes, the less Christians they're going to be out there, and less Christians that they're going to be out there, the less donations the 700 Club gets. So you got to understand, this is partially self-interest, and if it's partially self-interest, he's only going to say things that he thinks are the best advice possible. And once again, I'm going to say this again, Pat Robertson is trying to save the Republican Party. He's doing his best, but I just don't know if you can do it, Pat. I don't know, man. I listen. Maybe you know, maybe it's just my lack of faith in your God, but if he's gonna make something happen, man, he needs to get on it, brother. He needs to get on it.
They're low-paid people, Terry. They don't get adequate. It's not a question of training. It's a question of hiring a more superior workforce, and we aren't doing it. But we need police. We need them, and we need to honor them, and I'm all for it. But at the same time, we cannot have a bunch of clowns running around who are underpaid and who really are not the best and brightest. We've got to have the best in there. Ephraim?
I mean, once again, there's a lot of things he said there that I would not agree with, but there's also a lot of things that I would agree with. And again, Pat, man, tell us how you really feel, brother, because he called them overpaid clowns. Overpaid clowns. That is just, Pat, this was kind of scathing, man. I ain't gonna lie. And I was pretty surprised by this. That's the end of the clip. And I guess my overall reaction is that Pat Robertson is saying what I think needs to be said. Of course, there's going to be things that, depending on your politics and depending on how you see the issue, you're not going to actually agree with. But for the most part, the fact that he's willing to have the conversation, and he's at least willing to call things how he sees it, and at least willing to just be honest, I think that is a start. It's a lot better than what we've been getting, because he didn't just criticize. He went in. He used some names. He spoke it like the old people of the old days. And I think that Pat Robertson, being from the era that he's from, I think that does, even though he's an old white guy, even though a lot of people might discredit him because he's an old white guy, I think that does give him a little bit of, how should I say this, cachet to speak on it, because there's certain things that he might have seen that he might understand that maybe some younger people of the same, the same cultural identity may not have seen or could understand. So maybe somebody from that era has to explain it to them in a modern tone, in a modern day context. So with that being said, I really do appreciate what Pat Robertson did. I'm a pagan, he's a Christian, but I think that in some situations, even a pagan and a Christian can actually agree. Anyways, guys, that's going to be the end of the video. Thank you for watching the video. Make it towards the end. Hit the like button, share button. Make sure you share the content with other people. Leave a comment. Horns up. Peace out. Good night and good luck.